field? Or the run rules on the diamond at Love's Field? We're giving you the breakdowns, the bets, and the hot takes from the perspective of two former OU Athletics employees. You're listening to the Mainline Podcast with Tyler Burton and Adam Jaquez.
Let's go! Let's go!
Let's go. Welcome to the Mainline. I'm Adam Jaquez. He's Tyler Burton. It's season 5, episode 17. I believe it's episode 211 for the Mainline. The last scheduled Mainline that we have at this moment. We made that announcement last week. We'll talk a little bit more about it at the end of the show here. But Tyler, we got to jump right in. There's some big news for the Oklahoma Sooners world, and that is that Ben Arbuckle is the new offensive coordinator for Oklahoma.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, ever since the announcement that Seth Terrell was fired and Oklahoma made the decision halfway through the season that they were going to be parting ways, we knew that it was certainly inevitable that Oklahoma was going to be looking for a new play caller going into 2025. And, you know, ever since the very last second of the LSU game ran out, it just kind of felt like the clock's been ticking. I'm like, okay, when is this thing going to get announced? We've, heard some stuff behind the scenes over the last 2 to 3 weeks that, Ben Arbuckle, even though Oklahoma was going to be doing their due diligence and interviewing, a handful of guys throughout the country that, rightfully deserve a job like this, Ben Arbuckle was always the guy who kind of came to the front of this discussion. And lo and behold, here we are, December 2nd, with the hire is made. It is official. Ben Arbuckle is the new offensive coordinator at the University of Oklahoma, and kind of a crazy, non-traditional coaching route that this guy has taken, kind of climbing the ranks to find himself in Norman, Oklahoma, beginning his coaching career just a few years ago as an unpaid quality control analyst at Houston Baptist University. He did that for a couple of seasons, and then after spending the 2020 season as an offensive coordinator and quarterbacks coach at Seminole High School down there in the state of Texas, Arbuckle managed to land himself an offensive quality control position at Western Kentucky before being promoted to co-offensive coordinator. Kicked ass up there at Western Kentucky, and then for the last 2 seasons, he has been the offensive coordinator in Pullman, Washington, and he has done one hell of a job coaching offense, coaching quarterbacks, particularly Cam Ward, who is now tearing things up at Miami. He's going to be a Heisman Trophy finalist most likely, and now with John Mateer, the second-year quarterback for the Cougars. So, Adam, thoughts on this? There's definitely pros and cons to it. We're going to dive into it right now, but big picture-wise, do you think that Oklahoma made the right choice here?
Oh, that's such a loaded question that, I mean, if you asked me a week ago, I'd be like, man, I wish Oklahoma would have gone in other directions, like a Joe Craddock or Buster Faulkner. Those were the other 2 names that people were talking about. But, in terms of Ben Arbuckle, the last 24 hours, as I've gotten to know him a little bit better, obviously I'm going to get more excited about him. But I think there's different ways you could look at it. With those other 2 guys that are more run-heavy schemes, maybe it wasn't something that Oklahoma could, at least Brent Venables, felt confident that, hey, I can get those guys and I can start having immediate success with what's on the roster and what we've been building towards here at Oklahoma. And with Ben Arbuckle, maybe there is the faster path to success, even though it might not have as high of ceiling. And I don't know, maybe that's not something that Brent thinks about at all, but I definitely think with Arbuckle, he is a guy that is going to score a lot of points. He may not be first on your list, but he's definitely top 5 in terms of offensive coordinators. So, he's one of the top sought after guys out there in the entire country, and Oklahoma was able to land him. And he has a really fun and exciting offense. In my opinion, he's going to scheme a lot of guys open. We're taking a look at the highlights here for those watching on YouTube. First with some old highlights from Cam Ward. And I wanted to put in some clips here that weren't just all 50-yard touchdowns, but to show kind of the diversity of, hey, what are they doing on, quick passing games? What are they doing on long passing game? What does their run game look like? What are they doing on goal line? So we'll see a lot of those different clips here as we roll through. But I think the thing that really stands out to me is there is a lot of creativity. It's not too cute by any means, but it's very intelligent play design. And I think there's a lot of decisiveness from his quarterbacks and how they're reading the defense. They know exactly what they're wanting to go for. And they have a lot of, I don't want to say like free reign, but there's a ton of confidence that you'll see, especially when we get to some of the highlights from this year and John Mateer and how he, just looks so confident in what he's doing and improvising when the play doesn't necessarily go exactly how it should. So I think you see a lot of really good things out of Ben Arbuckle's offense. And we see that he has a 100% hit rate on his quarterbacks throughout his entire career. John Mateer this year, Cam Ward last year, who's going to be a first-round draft pick after transferring to Miami. He had Austin Reed at Western Kentucky before that, a guy that led the country in passing yards. Before that, he wasn't the offensive coordinator, but he was the quarterbacks coach at Western Kentucky when Bailey Zappi was there, fourth-round draft pick from the Patriots. So Ben Arbuckle is a guy that absolutely knows how to coach that quarterback position, and that should be a breath of fresh air for Oklahoma fans.
Yeah, especially when you've got, kind of the quarterback controversy, the uncertainty going to 2025 for Oklahoma. We're going to see that play out here over the next couple of weeks. But I think when you turn on the tape and you look at what Ben Arbuckle has done at Washington State over the last couple of seasons, whether it was Cam Ward in 2023 or this year with John Mateer, he does a really good job of being able to build his offense around his best players. And I think that, when you look at the screen game, quick game, throwing the ball down the field in the vertical passing game, that's something that Ben Arbuckle is not afraid to do, no matter who's playing quarterback or who's playing wide receiver. And that's going to be a breath of fresh air for Oklahoma. He's got a really good ability to scheme guys open. He builds plays off of one another. He's able to adapt to injuries when guys go down, and being able to adjust on the fly to how your opponent is defending you. Seth Luttrell couldn't do that for the first part of this season. Joe John Finley was better, but in my opinion, he was not ready to be an OC at this level at a place like Oklahoma, calling plays in the SEC. So again, when you look at what Ben Arbuckle likes to do, I know that people automatically think, okay, here's another air raid guy from the Mike Leach, coaching tree. This isn't going to work in the SEC. And to an extent, there is some air raid tendencies, but Ben Arbuckle likes to run the football. You're going to see a lot of 2 tight end sets. There's even going to be some formations where you've got an extra offensive lineman that they trot out there and go under center. I think that Gabe Eichert, for anybody that's out there that hasn't
video.
In the weeds video that the Oklahoma Breakdown does, he did a really nice 20-minute deep dive into what Ben Arbuckle and what this offense is going to look like that he's bringing to Oklahoma. And, the offense that Washington State had this year, they were ranked 12th nationally with 36.8 points per game. They were top 10 in the country in passing touchdowns, top 10 in yards per attempt, top 10 in passing efficiency. And I know that a lot of people, sit here and think that it's not going to be a huge priority for Ben Arbuckle to be running the football at Oklahoma. But when you pair what he likes to do schematically, which fits in really well with what Bill Beanbo has been able to do, producing some of his best offensive lines, those schemes are kind of, tied hand in hand together. And Washington State, they are 55th in rushing offense this year, just a hair over 170 yards per game. So, I think that this has an opportunity to be a really good hire. It's obviously a risky hire. Anytime that you're putting your faith in a 29-year-old coach that's only been a play caller for 3 years, who hasn't been playing, SEC level caliber competition. He give Washington credit. Their Flyers this year, starting off 8-1, losing their final 3. It was against kind of a makeshift Pac-12 Mountain West Conference type schedule. So there's going to be a huge uptick in competition that Ben Arbuckle is going to be calling plays against this year. But make no mistake about it, I think that when you turn on the tape, you watch how he calls plays, watch the different schemes and the different formations, how he likes to scheme, getting guys open, getting his best players the football. That's got to give you a lot of excitement at Oklahoma, because we didn't see that at all this year.
Yeah. A few different points that you brought up there that I think kind of are the knocks on Ben Arbuckle is that, well, he hasn't done this against very good competition. Well, if you're watching on YouTube, you saw his offense against Oregon, you saw his offense against Washington, both very good defenses. So yes, he is doing it against good competition, but you also have to keep in mind that he's doing this at Washington State. The talent level there is nowhere close to Oklahoma. It's very similar to the Mountain West Conference teams that he's playing against. They average, I think, the 65th best class over the last 3 years recruiting wise. No 4 stars whatsoever on the roster. So that's not a knock on him. That's Washington State. They're a small school. They have 30,000 seats in their stadium. They're way out in the middle of nowhere in Eastern Washington. So that's just the reality that he's playing with the same deck of cards that the defenses that he's going up against. So what he's doing is still very impressive. And when it comes to, things like the air raid system and people saying, a national championship has never been won with that system. Well, what programs that are at OU's level have been running the air raid? Like nobody. Alabama hasn't been running it. Georgia's never been running it. Ohio State's never been running it. And it's not because they're sitting around going, we can't win with this. It's because they already have something in place necessarily. So I'm not buying that, this is impossible to win, but I do think there are questions of like the run game. And you put out some good stats there that I think are encouraging to hear, but I do kind of question and wonder, and I'm very curious to see with Arbuckle, like, can we can we run the ball in a way that is really meaningful in the SEC and can help us win games, seal games and so forth, and get that final hard yard or two. It was encouraging to see I formation down the goal line on some of those highlights, but I do still have some concerns and questions there.
Yeah, I think you make a really good point. And again, we're not sitting here saying that Ben Arbuckle is going to come in and absolutely light the world on fire, and it's going to take him having to, transform Oklahoma's offense into being a top 5, top 10 unit. Oklahoma's not going to have to get back to that type of efficiency and level of production to compete for a national championship or compete for an SEC championship with the strides and progress that Zach Alley and Brent Venables have made. Zach's first year in Oklahoma, Brent just finishing his third year at Oklahoma, bridging the gap and, just getting the offense, maybe top 30, maybe top 40. You're going to find yourself in a situation where if we would have had that level of production this season, this is probably a 9-win football team, maybe on the verge of 10 wins at Oklahoma. And it's just a few little tweaks here and there. I know that we're going to talk personnel here in a few minutes, because it doesn't matter how good your scheme is. If you don't have the Jimmies and the Joes, it's not going to matter, especially in the SEC. But I think at the end of the day, was this the hire that many people thought, okay, this is just a slam dunk, no brainer, Oklahoma, knocked this out of the park? I don't necessarily think so. I think that there were a lot of other candidates out there, like a Joe Craddock at Tulane, who's got a pretty good track record. Anybody that watched that game last week between Georgia and Georgia Tech, when you look at what Haynes King and that Yellow Jacket offense did against Georgia, led by offensive coordinator Buster Faulkner, I know that there were a lot of people that thought that he might be a guy that could sneak in here at the very end, and Brent Venables could poach him out of Atlanta. But again, we'll see what happens. But I like the hire. Brent feels very confident in this. I think that if you're a quarterback, if you're an offensive skill player, when you turn on the tape and you watch what Ben Arbuckle puts out there on Saturdays, you've got to feel, very, very happy with what you're seeing. And hopefully that this is something with National Signing Day, being less than 12 hours away now, you hope that they've had an opportunity to get on the phone with all these offensive recruits, particularly Cortez Mills, particularly Michael Fasusi, and they can sell them on the vision that is the Ben Arbuckle offense. But again, Arbuckle's coaching history doesn't give you all the confidence in the world that he's ready to call plays in the SEC, but I think that he has a super, super high ceiling, much like what we saw from Lincoln Riley when he came out of East Carolina a few years ago. If this works, and you can combine that with what Brent Venables is known for on the defensive side of the football, the brand of football that he's building in Norman, Oklahoma right now, this is going to be a good match.
Yeah. Good question from Chuck here in the chat. Thanks for joining us tonight, Chuck. He said, that's not the right one. He said, who would you guys have picked? And I think I would, in an ideal scenario, I would have liked Joe Craddock, but kind of like we touched on earlier, I don't know if Craddock's system would have found immediate success at Oklahoma. And that's what Oklahoma needs. And it's kind of the reality of the situation. In all things, a perfect world, maybe Arbuckle wouldn't be the guy that you bring in here, but he is the guy that I think can provide instant offense. And he probably is linked to the best quarterback, John Mateer, who officially not in the portal as of Tuesday evening as we're recording this. Maybe that changes early tomorrow, or we'll see. But the assumption is that there's some sort of package deal there. And I kind of hate, honestly, that the way the offensive coordinator hires seem to be going, not just at Oklahoma, but at other colleges around the country, that's like, well, you hire that offensive coordinator and the quarterback automatically follows. And it's kind of like, well, I don't know. I'd like to shop around and browse and see what else is out there. And maybe John Mateer really is the right guy. It sure sounds like, as of right now, among the names that are currently in the portal, Mateer would probably be my preference, but I'm curious to see, like, would anybody else be a shock or a surprise that you might want out there to, be a potential starter at the University of Oklahoma? So we shall see. I guess, realistically, go ahead, Tyler.
Well, I was just going to say, back to Chuck's question. I mean, I think it's really a matter of who's realistic and who would just be the absolute ideal candidate. I mean, obviously there's a lot of offensive coordinators out there that are putting up, huge high power offenses. Obviously Will Stein out there in Eugene, Oregon with the Ducks. What I'd love to have him at Oklahoma if OU could, outbid Oregon. One, that's not going to happen. Two, why would somebody that's at a very successful program in the year 2024, why would they choose to jump ship to a worse situation than what they currently have? And I think that when you look at it, really, there's three things that kind of this boiled down for me in terms of proving the best guy to come in and be the offensive coordinator and what's going to be a pivotal 2025 season. Because, as much as we are sitting here, excited about the prospect of Ben Arbuckle and what he could do for this Oklahoma offense going forward, there's a lot of pressure on the shoulders of the 29-year-old guy, which it's crazy. He's younger than both of us right now. Look at where we're at right now compared to him. But there's a ton of pressure on Ben Arbuckle's shoulders because he has the opportunity to be the guy that makes or breaks it for Brent Venables as the head football coach in Oklahoma, passing next year. If this thing falls flat on its face, if Oklahoma can't go out there and really improve the roster on the offensive side of the football, if we can't win 8, 9, possibly 10 games next year, and this doesn't look like it's on the right track, then you're possibly looking at this program, looking for a new head football coach and setting the program back, for the better part of a decade. But again, he's got a really good track record with the ability to develop quarterbacks, whether that is a John Mateer coming over from Washington State, another portal option, Jackson Arnold, Michael Hawkins. He's shown that he has the ability with far less talent to be able to really maximize what those guys have the opportunity to do. Score points, high efficient football. He's been able to do that the last couple of seasons at Washington State. And the thing that's the biggest thing for me of all, Adam, because in today's age of college football, where you've got, the high school recruiting, you've got the transfer portal being the wild, wild west, no regulations. It's a free for all, pay for play. You've got to figure out a way to maximize your personnel because your roster is going to be changing so much on an annual basis. So the fact that Ben Arbuckle is going to be able to come in here in spring football, be able to evaluate the guys that they currently have on the roster, the new faces that are going to be joining us tomorrow on National Signing Day, along with the transfer portal additions. He's going to be able to come in on day one and really sit down and evaluate, okay, this is what we've got at wide receiver. This is what we've got at tight end and running back. This is where we're strong on the offensive line. These are our weaknesses as a football team based on our personnel. And he's going to build the offense around what he has. And that's something that, again, I'm not sitting here trying to shit on Seth Luttrell, but I don't really know what Seth Luttrell was trying to do. It was obvious that the offense that he was trotting out there, it didn't suit the personnel that we had. Joe John Finley did make things a little bit better, but at the end of the day, you were very limited based on the personnel that you had at your disposal. So I'm excited to see what Oklahoma is going to be able to do in the recruiting ranks and how Ben Arbuckle is going to be able to tie all that together and trot out a competent offense this fall.
Yeah, and speaking of an ever-changing roster and new guys potentially coming in, we looked at a lot of highlights there of John Mateer just now. So let's talk about like some of the portal needs that Oklahoma has. Quarterback, I think, is a pretty obvious one. I was truly surprised with how many responses we've gotten on Twitter over the last 3 days or so on multiple different posts of people saying, hey, we want Jackson Arnold to be the guy next year. And I think I've probably been his biggest defender throughout most of this season. It feels like I felt like I was alone in that. And all of a sudden, everyone wants Jackson Arnold to stick around for another year. So I'm a little bit surprised by that. But I don't see a scenario where he does that because for one, I think Brent Venables has to bet on, hey, we need to bring in some competition for that starting quarterback position because he's coaching for his job. And two, I don't see Jackson Arnold saying, hey, yeah, I'll take a major pay cut to maybe be the starter or maybe be the backup, but I just want to stick around in Oklahoma. That's not how college football works today. In an ideal world, I would be thrilled if he says, yeah, I'm willing to stick around and compete with whoever you bring out of the portal. But I just don't see Venables or Arnold making that gamble and saying, yeah, we're going to run it back, especially at a reduced NIL contract.
Yeah, I think when you look at everything that Jackson Arnold dealt with and had to overcome this year, continuing to compete and be a leader for this football team, we would all like to sit here and say that, yes, we want Jackson Arnold to be the guy that rights the ship for this Oklahoma offense. It can be the guy that leads this team back to, the standard of Oklahoma football, what it's grown accustomed and what we expect it to be in Norman, Oklahoma. But I think at this point right now, if you're Brent Venables and you're coaching for your job next season, do you want to run the risk of going into another season with Jackson Arnold, who, again, he did have his struggles in year one as the starting quarterback in Oklahoma? Or do you want to say, okay, Ben Arbuckle, we're trusting you. I made the decision to hire you. What do you like? Do you want to bring in John Mateer, who, again, that would be my pick right now if I could have anybody. That includes Jackson Arnold, that includes other people in the transfer portal. The fact that you could bring in a proven guy that's played in this system that Ben Arbuckle has deployed out there in Pullman, Washington, that would be my pick. I mean, his numbers statistically this year are better than Cam Ward, and Cam Ward is on his way to being a top 5 NFL draft pick this year. So the fact that you would be able to bring him in year one, you don't have to sit down and teach this scheme to a brand new quarterback that's completely new and green to this situation. You've got your quarterback in John Mateer that knows the system like the back of his hand. That can, further speed up the process of being able to get this offense installed across the board, across all the different position groups. So that would be my pick right now, John Mateer. I made the comment in the group chat, and I think I might have even said it the last couple of episodes. It's almost like watching Baker Mayfield 2.0. He's got that moxie, the style of football that he plays. That's a guy that this fan base will gravitate behind and support. Not saying they would Jackson Arnold, because like I said, I think that everybody would love for Jackson Arnold to be that guy. And maybe it'll work out. Maybe he decides to come back another year. Maybe he does get this thing back on the right track for Oklahoma. But yeah, John Mateer is the guy at quarterback. Adam, I'm going to throw it over to you because I've got a lot to say regarding the tight end, wide receiver, and running back. I think that we are not talented enough, even when we are fully healthy. I think you've got to make some serious additions on each of these position groups. So I'll turn it back over to you. What do you think skill-wise?
Yeah, tight end, obviously we're going to need some help there because I think the expectation is that Caden Helms, Caden McIntyre, those are potential portal guys. We haven't heard anything. There's no rumor or anything, but it just kind of feels like those guys may be looking to seek some playing time and seek some new opportunities. So that could be a room where you might need to make some additions. We know that Jake Roberts is graduating. It's his last year of college football. Bauer Sharp potentially could be back. And as much as OU fans really don't love hearing that, but like Bauer Sharp, I think has a lot to give still. If he does say, hey, I want to continue being in Norman, he may say, hey, I've had enough of this fan base. I wouldn't blame him for that if that's the route he chose. And then Devon Mitchell, we never saw this year. He wasn't ready to be out there. He was supposed to be a high school senior. So maybe that changes, but there is a lot of use for a tight end H-back position in the Ben Arbuckle offense. So I think you'll definitely want to go out and seek some opportunities there. And same for running back. DeMarco Murray, we haven't yet heard confirmation that he will indeed be back. It's possible that Ben Arbuckle, is going to bring somebody else in. Maybe DeMarco Murray says, hey, I've had enough. I'm ready for a new opportunity. He's flirted with those options in the past. So, the running back position is one that has, I think, recruited good, maybe not like super great. You do have Taylor Tatum, one of the, the top running back of last year's class, but hasn't really put it all together yet. Xavier Robinson, we have 2.5 games of pretty good tape on him so far. And then Javonte Barnes, who's also been kind of a DeMarco guy. Maybe he would be a portal exit if DeMarco Murray does indeed leave. Gavin Sawchuk, potential there. So that's a position room where I think you're going to see a lot of new names, new faces. I will say, Sam Franklin, that was probably the lowest point of my OU fandom, was watching him run out the clock against LSU because we were too scared to throw the ball and try to, get another score before the game ended. That was absolutely awful to watch, but maybe he'll be back. So yeah, I think there's a big extreme makeover that needs to happen in both of those rooms.
Well, I think that was when Oklahoma made that press release yesterday, and Brent Venables was talking about, adding Ben Arbuckle to this coaching staff and talking about how he was looking forward to watching Ben coach with the rest of this offensive staff going forward. And, we feel pretty confident. We know that Bill Beanbo is going to be back. I would, chances are better than 50-50. Emmett Jones is going to be back. Now, I wasn't overly thrilled with the lack of development we saw this year from the wide receiver position. I know that we were injury ridden at that position group, but at the end of the day, after about the third or fourth game of the season, it was the same guys that played a majority of the snaps all year long. And really, outside of Jacob Jordan, who's a walk-on, there was really no other receiver that you could seriously sit there and say got better as the season progressed. Maybe that's on the offensive coordinator. Maybe that's on the wide receiver coach. I'm not sure. But again, as much as Emmett Jones has done from a recruiting standpoint, he needs to come back. He deserves the opportunity to come back. His ties to the state of Texas with the High School Football Coaching Association, that's pivotal. Emmett Jones needs to return. This gets me tied into running back. I appreciate everything that Joe John Finley has done for this program as a coach and as a player. Again, he was dealt a really bad hand, with Seth Luttrell getting fired halfway through the season, him getting thrown into a situation where, you're down X amount of offensive linemen, you're down 5 starting wide receivers. The quarterback battle between, Hawkins and Jackson Arnold was a shit show. Bravo, Joe John, for making the best of that opportunity, getting Oklahoma to 6 wins. But for the second year in a row, the tight end position has been the worst group on this football team. It's a liability. It's not a proven asset. That needs to change. Oklahoma needs to go out there and they need to get at least one. Ideally, you'd like to go get 2 guys from the transfer portal, maybe a couple different body types, one that's a more proven commodity as a pass catcher, one that, can line up there, play with his hand in the dirt and block on the line. I would like to see that. I would be shocked, honestly, if we don't have a new tight ends coach after National Signing Day and after the bowl game. We'll see how that plays out. Running back is an interesting one for me, Adam, because how many times have we come on here after the last 3 seasons talking about how the running back rotation and the decisions on who gets carries continues to frustrate and not make any sense to us? The production and talent level isn't what it once was at running back at Oklahoma. You compare that to other programs right now. I mean, you just go back, you watch the Ohio State Michigan game, you watch Texas A&M, Alabama, Georgia. It's night and day difference watching the running backs that are on those football teams compared to what we've got at Oklahoma. And as much as we love DeMarco for what he's done, like Joe John Finley as a player and as a coach, it wouldn't hurt my feelings if we parted ways and brought a different guy in here. Some new blood, bring some new energy and life into that running back position. And I think that you need to go out there. You need to sign 2, maybe 3 wide receivers. You need to go out there, get another running back. But Adam, before we talk offensive line, am I going too far in saying that it concerns me and I'm very worried about the fact that Oklahoma and the transfer portal, because of how bad the evaluations have been the last couple of cycles, particularly, with Spencer Brown, with Bauer Sharp, and with Jake Roberts, Fabici and Weewu. And again, I'm not sitting here saying that, these guys haven't had their moments this season. They have, but I mean, let's call a spade a spade. We're at this point right now. All 4 of those guys that I just mentioned should not be playing meaningful reps at the University of Oklahoma.
Yeah, I think, with some of those guys, you definitely want to recruit over them. Fabici and Weewu, if you can find somebody, or if Eddie Pierre-Louis is that guy that you've recruited over him and now he starts in year 2 at Oklahoma, you definitely try to do that at pretty much every position across the board. It's something that I think you could say, yeah, Oklahoma's portal evaluations haven't been great. I think you could also say that Oklahoma's spending a little bit below that top tier of portal. And really, it's kind of like, I think you have an 80-20 element going on in the portal. 80% of the guys are not really going to do much. 20%, top 20% are going to do that. And I think Oklahoma's kind of playing in that bottom 80% right now. And there's also just not very many good players in the portal.
I understand that, but this goes back to the DeMarco Murray running back situation. You let a guy in Tawi Walker leave the program, top 2 or 3 rusher in the Big Ten this year. I think by touchdowns, he was top 2 or 3. And your alternative was to bring in a guy in Sam Franklin that really was never better than 4 string on the depth chart this year. That's the type of decision making that I just simply don't understand. And I think that's inexcusable at a place like Oklahoma.
Yeah, I can't argue with that at all. I think I'd like to see another running back coach here, but the one thing that kind of makes me think, okay, maybe you keep DeMarco around, is that I don't know what Ben Arbuckle is going to sell to a running back, because his track record with running backs is not super great. I think the running back he has this year is around 750 yards. That's his highest output as an offensive coordinator. So he's not going to have a whole lot to say, hey, look at and point at and say, this is why you should be, the best running back in the country here at Oklahoma. DeMarco Murray can kind of say that, being the former NFL MVP and playing at Oklahoma. So that there's that element. But yeah, I don't know. The production and recruiting from DeMarco Murray has not been what we had all hoped it had, hoped it would be when he came to Oklahoma. So yeah, I mean, a fresh start there might be a good sign. I think Emmett Jones is, potentially coming back, and Bill Beanbo likely coming back, it sounds like, but yeah, I think some fresh faces along the offense would certainly help.
And I think the offensive line is not really a position group that you would expect a ton of portal casualties. I mean, obviously, you're going to lose a couple of guys in Spencer Brown, Michael Tarquin, Branson Hickman. They're all going to be gone. They've run out of eligibility. They're going to graduate. But, you're bringing in 4 guys that are all set to sign tomorrow in, Fasusi, Foje, Hollenbeck, and Afalava. God help us that in the matter of 12 to 18 hours time, pen has hit the paper for all 4 of those guys. But I think what you've got coming back, I think that you can feel okay with the current guys that are on the roster, given the production and the how much better these guys get, whether it's a Logan Howell and a Heath Ozeta. as the year kind of played on. I think that you can feel okay about the offensive line going into next year, but I still think ideally you would want to go out there and get 1 to 2 guys. Go get 2 interior guys, because I think you're going to be okay at the tackle position. You're going to have Jacob Sexton back. Jake Taylor's going to be back. Logan Howland. I think that that's a pretty decent 3-man rotation for those 2 tackle spots, but I think that you've got to continue to find ways to get better on the interior, because what we found out week in and week out in the SEC this year, there's no breaks. I mean, you're going to be facing NFL defensive linemen each and every week, and with what you see, how well these programs recruit, who Oklahoma's got on their schedule next year. Oklahoma's got to beef up the offensive line. They got to do it now.
Yeah, and I'll kind of set my expectations pretty low on that, because along the offensive line, there's not very many options in the portal. You look back and say, okay, who were the top portal offensive linemen a year ago? It was Caden Proctor, who went from Alabama to Iowa back to Alabama. So that really wasn't a portal situation. The center at Alabama was another one that was a top guy. Well, that was a guy from Washington following his coach. Mm-hmm. So there's just not many guys that are just, hey, I'm going to go on the market and move around. Lance Hurd from Tennessee was one of those few guys that did that. So there's just not too many options in the offensive line. I think the most likely path that Oklahoma has to success is internal development. And that's Heath Ozida, that's Logan Howland, that's Troy Everett, that's Eddie Pierre-Louis, Jacob Sexton if he returns, Jake Taylor, hopefully he returns healthy. It's those 6 guys, honestly, that you're going to take big leaps with those guys. And then the portal, I think, is probably more depth pieces of, hey, we've got an emergency guy at left guard if we need to, if Heath Ozida is hurt or, isn't living up to par.
I hate to say this, Adam, but you can't help always comparing yourself to your arch rival. And when you look at what Texas has got right now on both sides of the line of scrimmage, they built that from the high school recruiting ranks. They built that through development, getting these kids out of high school, bringing in 4- and 5-star guys on both sides of the football, and give credit where credit's due. They've done a hell of a job developing these kids. They've been able to go out there and pull a guy or two from the transfer portal. Trey Moore from UTSA, edge guy for Texas's defense. He's played a pivotal role this year. But at the end of the day, that's where Bill Bedenbaugh, and I think if you put some truth serum in his cup, that's what he wants. He doesn't want to have to go out there and continually have to sign 3 and 4, transfer portal guys that are essentially 1-year rentals. You want to go out there and recruit at a high level out of the high school ranks, be able to get these kids in here, develop them, and just continue to, generate that steady pipeline where, you have guys that come in, they play 1 or 2 seasons, they go to the NFL. Okay, next man up. We got another recruiting class coming in right behind them to fill that gap as well. So offensive line, we'll see what happens. If you flip it over to the defensive side of the football, I don't really want to touch on this too much because I feel a whole lot better about the defense than I do the offense right now. But again, I think that ideally, you can never have too many really good defensive linemen. If there's an opportunity, whether it's an edge guy or interior defensive tackle, you got to go out there and pay premium dollar for those guys. Linebacker, you lose Danny Stutzman. Zach Alley talked about it after the LSU game, that it's Kip Lewis and Kobe McKenzie's time. Those are the 2 guys. Those are the 2 leaders of that room. You've got Lewis Carter. You got Jaron Canick, Phil Pachotti. We'll see what happens. And honestly, it wouldn't shock me at all if he's not a part of this program next year with the transfer portal being available. But I think that linebacker is one that you got to go out there and make something happen. And then for the life of me, go out there and get another corner. Because as good as Eli Bowen was this year, he exceeded all of our expectations as a true freshman. But much like we talked about with NFL defensive linemen each and every week, you're going to be facing NFL talented receivers each and every week as well. So you've got to have really, really good corners out there to be able to trust out there on an island. That's the next piece that Zach Allen and Brent Venables have got to get fixed on this defense to be able to continue to build this thing up to an elite defense.
Yeah, I think corner is my top concern. I think you're looking at 1 to 2 guys maybe that could be bringing in there and complementing Eli Bowen, Jacoby Johnson, Kendall Dolby returning at that cheetah spot. So I think it's a situation on defense where, hey, we only need probably 1 or 2 guys at each level of the defense. And so you're able to spend more money on that, each of those guys, to get the right guy, to get more of an impact guy that's going to be able to come in and not have to fill nearly as many holes. So more advantageous for sure on defense. What about signing day tomorrow? Kind of a non-eventful, kind of a weird, feeling about signing day going on, but maybe there is some storylines to watch, particularly, I guess, around the quarterback position, because Oklahoma just made an offer about 2 hours before we hit record here to a quarterback from Lehigh, Utah. Jet New, I'm going to say is how you say his name. I haven't heard anyone say it just yet, but he's a guy that was committed to Oklahoma State. And it sounds like Oklahoma's probably going to steal him here at the last hour.
Yeah, welcome to Oklahoma, Ben Arbuckle. There's no better way to get Oklahoma fans on your side than on your first day in office. Let's go out there and steal the quarterback commit from your arch rival, Oklahoma State, just a little bit further north up I-35. So, again, 3-star, you turn on the tape, pretty decent senior tape. Again, I think that this is going to be a guy that will have an opportunity possibly at Oklahoma in 3 to 4 years' time. I think that this is a guy that is going to be a project. But, Ben Arbuckle, he's got a really good track record in developing quarterbacks, so he obviously sees something in this kid that he really likes. He thinks that there's some tools there that he can really develop and turn this kid into a ball player. So again, if this is what Ben Arbuckle wants to do, this is the first guy that he's offered since getting the offensive coordinator job at Oklahoma. Let's ride with it. Let's see what we can do. But there are two bigger storylines that I think that Oklahoma has to monitor tomorrow, because I think for the most part, it will be a pretty quiet signing day as a whole, but there are two guys that Oklahoma fans need to be aware of as signing day kicks off here in about 12 hours time. It's obviously the 5-star offensive tackle, Michael Fasusi. You talk to Oklahoma, you talk to the beat guys, they feel confident about where Oklahoma is. Texas's guys think that they've got an opportunity. They've made some moves in the last 24 to 48 hours that they can flip him tomorrow and capture his signature. And then there's other guys that simply say, hey, as long as Bill Beanbo's here, you got absolutely nothing to worry about. Michael Fasusi will be a Sooner, and I hope that is the case. And then obviously the 4-star wide receiver, Cortez Mills. There's a lot of discussion right now on, even though he is an Oklahoma commit, Nebraska is working really, really hard, making that money bag a little bit heavier than it was just a few days ago, trying to get his services up there to Lincoln, Nebraska. So Fasusi and Mills, those are the two guys I'm going to be keeping an eye on for many people out there that are going to be listening to this podcast. We will know the fate of these two guys, I think, by the time you listen to this. So we'll see how it plays out. But if they can get the commitment of Michael Fasusi, I really don't care as much what happens with Cortez Mills. We would obviously love to have him in Oklahoma, but you got to build this thing from the inside out. You've got to go out there and get the signature from all 4 of these offensive linemen.
Yeah, 100% agree. I think Cortez Mills is a really special talent at wide receiver, but you can go get 80-90% of him on the transfer portal or through other high school commits. Michael Fasusi and an offensive tackle in that regard, you can't do that. That doesn't exist. You have to get that guy from the high school ranks. You have to develop him. You have to keep him. And, signing that national letter of intent doesn't mean what it used to mean in years past. They can certainly still change and waffle their way out. It's really when they show up.
Don't forget to put the date on it too. Let's put
that too. So
put the date on it.
There's a lot of elements there, but I do feel like still signing day means something. Those guys are going to put their pen on paper, and I think it's going to at least get them, 90% of the way there. We can say, okay, they really are committed to Oklahoma. But obviously we know lots of rule changes in college football, so things are changing there. But yeah, those are the ones to keep our eyes on. And maybe Oklahoma makes some late offers after this initial signing day to go out and try to find some overlooked guys. But I think more likely Brent Venables is going to be focused on the portal of who are some guys that can help out right away, because this is make or break year for him. There's no waiting around for some guy to develop, especially an overlooked high school player. So I think the portal is going to be a lot bigger focus there.
Adam, there's been a lot of buzz that Oklahoma over the last season they spent about $8 to $12 million on NIL. That's transfer portal guys included. But then there's also some speculation. There's a lot of people behind the scenes right now that have pretty much said that, okay, the big money donors, they're pissed off with the current state of Oklahoma football. You can expect that pot to be closer to 20 to 25 million. Are you buying that, or is that just kind of fool's gold, for lack of a better term?
I don't know. I don't really buy it a whole lot. And I know Joe Castiglione came out with the email today that, Oklahoma is positioning with former AT&T CEO Randall Stevenson, I believe, that whole front office element that you see at the NFL level, that, okay, we're going to start using that $20.5 million that is going to be the new rule of here's our pocket of change that we can start using to pay all of our student athletes across the university. And that's great and all. But yeah, it's like, it's not the limit. It's not a salary cap in any way. So you're still going to have to contend with the deeper pockets of A&M, Texas, other schools like that, Oregon being another one that's kind of been a thorn in Oklahoma's side. So that'll help if Oklahoma, as the athletic department, can start directly paying that. But yeah, I don't know that I'm necessarily buying that people are unhappy and suddenly they're starting to donate more to collectives and things like that. it,
Yeah.
I wouldn't necessarily want to start contributing a lot of money knowing that, like, I'm basically bailing out Brent Venables when I'm also the person that's going to be expected to pay buyouts if that scenario does pass. So I don't know that I necessarily buy that there's suddenly more money there.
I think that's a perfect segue. Obviously, with this being our last episode, maybe ever for quite some time. We'll give our closing thoughts here in a minute, but right after we do our final best bets, I cannot wait for that segment to come to an end. It's been abysmal this year for both of us, but we can't get out of here, Adam, without looking at the big picture here. That could be 2025. That could be this Oklahoma football program going forward. The head coach, administration. Just what are your thoughts on where Oklahoma, the direction that we're going? Obviously, we just completed our first year in the SEC, and I knew that this was going to be an experience that Oklahoma fans weren't quite ready for, but this was a very eye-opening experience for me, not just from a, not just from a fan standpoint, game day atmospheres, different fan bases that going to different campuses and seeing the passion behind it. It really does just mean more, but this was a huge eye-opening experience because I don't think that a lot of us really realistically sat here and thought that Oklahoma was just going to come into the SEC, in the first couple of seasons and knock the door down, win 9-10 ball games. But it's amazing to me how far behind we are, I think, in terms of the other upper echelon teams in this conference, whether it's from a program standpoint, booster standpoint, how talented we are. That was one of the biggest takeaways for me. We're severely lacking and falling behind some of these other programs in the country. And we'll see if Oklahoma can make some adjustments. And then I've got one other thing that I'll save here for the end.
I'm laughing inside because I'm thinking about my 80-year-old aunt who on Sunday, she's the type of person that texts me and says, what channels is Oklahoma and Oklahoma State on this weekend? And she told me on Sunday, she said, these SEC teams, they seem to play a lot harder than Oklahoma does. I was just like, this is the lowest point of my fandom of Oklahoma. My 80-year-old aunt saying that to me and Sam Franklin running out the clock down 20 points to LSU because we're too scared to throw the ball. Those are such low points for me. But yeah, it's a major adjustment to the SEC. And I think Oklahoma and Brent Venables and the staff and what they recruited and how they stocked this roster, I think they learned some really hard lessons this year. And it's going to be interesting to see, like, do they bounce back really fast from that? Was it the fact that injuries were just so, hard to overcome that it just didn't matter? I'm not buying that. We knew that we had Zion Raggins. We knew that we had Zion Kearney, so forth. We had those guys basically from game 2, and we knew that was what we had. And those guys really never did anything for the final 11 games of the year. So you can make excuses around that. You can make excuses around the offensive coordinator. Well, Brent put us in that position by hiring Seth Luttrell. And then he didn't hit the ejection button until it was really too late in the year to make any types of major changes. So you can say, okay, give Brent a chance with a new offensive coordinator. He dug himself this hole. So is Ben Arbuckle a great hire? I hope he is. But I also know that Brent Venables has shot us in the foot a little bit by making Seth Luttrell the offensive coordinator the first time and not mitigating and making sure that situation didn't turn out better. So there's a lot of things that have to be overcome. It's going to be really tough. Brent Venables is in a little bit of a hole, but he's a guy that's a fighter for sure. So if there's anybody that can dig himself out of that, it is surely Brent. But I'm hopeful. I'm rooting for him. There's not a lot of success stories out there of guys that have been in this type of situation and have bounced back and gone on to win national championships. And that's kind of one of my bigger concerns at the moment is that as Oklahoma fans, the thing that we're going to be saying all off season is that, we need to get to 8 wins. If we can get to 8 wins, maybe 9 wins, and then we'll kind of be on the edge of that playoff discussion. We'll be great. Maybe if we make the playoffs, we'll be so happy. And I agree. Yes, that will be better than where we are right now. We are at the lowest point of Oklahoma fandom for you and I of our entire lifetime of watching Oklahoma football. But 8-9 wins is absolutely disgusting. It's despicable that Oklahoma should even aspire to that in any year, in my opinion.
That's how far we've fallen.
But I don't care. I don't care that we are 6-6. There's no excuse to go 8 wins, 9 wins at any point ever. That is just disgusting. It should never be uttered out of an Oklahoma fan's mouth.
I think that 2024, playing the difficulty of schedule that we have over the last 3 months, it's proven that the talent level needs to continue to rise in this program, and to compete for a national championship, or really even just an SEC championship, you have to be really, really good at three positions. No question about it. You got to be good at quarterback. You got to be good on the offensive line, and you've got to be good on the defensive line. Oklahoma, we're starting to trend that way on the defensive side of the football. Offensive line, Bill Beanboat's on him to get this thing back on track. We'll see what Ben Arbuckle can do at the quarterback position. And as far as this year goes, you can blame having to replace your starting quarterback and all 5 starting offensive linemen from a year ago. You can point to the high number of injuries on the offensive side of the football, multiple offensive linemen, 5 wide receivers, Seth Luttrell being a joke of an offensive coordinator, getting fired halfway through the year, quarterback controversy, Arnold and Hawkins. You played the hardest schedule in college football. Adam, all of that doesn't mean a damn thing when you look at what the standard is for football at the University of Oklahoma and the tradition and the excellence over, the last century of what this has built it up to be. Even though the defensive side of the football, I think, has made some improvements, we can sit here and confidently say that Oklahoma is trending in the right direction as far as defense goes. 2024 was a complete and utter failure at Oklahoma. And that leads us into 2025, where if the Sooners can't get this thing back on track, you win 9 games, maybe 10 games. You're not – the way I justify it is if Oklahoma's not making the college football playoff next year, that's a failure. That's where I'm at right now. You can sell me on – if Brent, just gets us to 8-4, that's good enough. Give him another year. That's not what the level of expectation is at Oklahoma. And I know sometimes you've got to be realistic. You've got to, consider, okay, going from 6-6 to 8-4. Yes, that is a step in the right direction, but this is Oklahoma. We have higher standards than that. We have higher level of expectations for that. And it's not just Brent's ass that people are going to be on next year if things don't progress. They're going to be looking at the rest of the administration. And to me, that includes Joe Castiglione. And this is the last thing I'm going to say, and I apologize for the language, but Adam, when you look at all the different things that we've ran into this year, and you look at the athletic department with football being a particular focus, you look at what Bama, Texas, A&M, all these programs are doing. Look at what's going on in Knoxville right now. People in those administration offenses at Oklahoma, they better wake the fuck up, because it's unacceptable what's going on in Oklahoma right now. So again, I know that we've been on our high horse for the last 25 years, all about doing things a certain way. You better adapt to the times, because the college football landscape is changing, and I'm not happy with where Oklahoma is right now. We'll see if we can't get this thing moving in the right direction. Joe Castiglione has shown us that he's the best athletic director in America, but there's some certain things that have got to be changed philosophically on the way that we do things from a program standpoint. We'll see if that can't get changed.
I'll say one negative thought and then one positive thought to kind of help round us out here, so we're not super negative. But I used to always look around and go, okay, there's Alabama and there's Ohio State, and then OU's below those 2 programs. But historically, over the last 70 years, like we're right in that upper echelon of top 3 programs, and we can look down on the Georgias of the world and the LSU's and the Auburns. But now those programs have won national championships. Michigan even has won a national championship regularly or recently. Texas might be doing the same this year. So Oklahoma can't lord it over some of those programs that used to be below us. Now we're sinking even lower. Maybe like we're in competition with like the Tennessee, Floridas of the world at this point. I don't know, but that's a disturbing trend that Oklahoma. Yeah, it's a disturbing trend that Oklahoma has really been on since 2008, and a lot of empty calorie conference championships since 2008. And, the SEC has been the best conference over the last 15 years or so, but in 2008, it was the Big 12. That was the best conference, in my opinion. There was tons of top teams there, and Oklahoma was winning that conference, and things have just not been the same. They have not been dominant since then. And so we all thought, okay, Brent was going to bring the attention to detail. And here's the positive thought is like, maybe the schedule does set up better for him next year, because you're going to have more home games. And Brent, by a wide margin, is much better at home. For some reason on the road, he just doesn't have the record for some reason. Maybe that starts to turn around, but Ole Miss at home, Auburn at home, LSU at home, Missouri at home, and several of those teams replacing quarterbacks. Like, you should be in much better position to win a lot of those games. Michigan at home, we'll see how good they really are next year when they come.
As long as Ryan Day's not coaching, Oklahoma will have a chance.
Yes. So there's some things that should help Oklahoma just schedule wise, having a functional quarterback, which we expect them to get, whoever that might be. But there should be some things that certainly help Oklahoma. My greatest fear, though, is that we just sit in the middle, and we win 9 games. We're excited. I won't be excited about that, but I think the fan base will be relatively excited about that. And we just keep running it back, and being nowhere close to a championship, but being just good enough to not really make major changes. And that's my greatest fear.
I think that it's probably a little bit unrealistic to sit here and say that Oklahoma could get to the level that Saban had Alabama, Kirby has it at Georgia right now, where you're realistically your preseason top 3 each and every year, and it's a failure if you don't win the national championship. I'm not sitting here saying that Oklahoma that should that be the goal? Yes, absolutely. But that's also the goal for 60 other programs in college football. But it's just simply not realistic. I just don't want to, as we continue to go down this path, I don't want to sit back here in this chair 4 or 5 years from now, knowing that okay, we're Ole Miss. We're Tennessee. We win 8 games a year. We win 9 games a year. Maybe you have a special type. Maybe you have a special season once out every 4 or 5 years where you can find yourself 10, 11 wins, have a chance to win a national championship. But maybe that is the new norm. Maybe that's the path that we're heading. I hope that that's not the case. I hope that Brent can get this on the right track because, the foundation with what Oklahoma has done over the last, 70, 80 years, we've got the track record that shows that we can do it. Now it's just a matter of being able to adapt to the times and adapt or die. That really is the model, with the current status of college football, with the NIL and the transfer portal, and we'll see what happens. But again, it's not where we want it right now. But this is Oklahoma. Rarely have we ever been down as a football program, over the last 70, 80 years. We'll see if we can't get this thing back on track.
A little bit longer episode this week because it is our last scheduled episode. So we have to cover a lot and really kind of dive into the weeds of some of these things that normally we would talk about in future episodes. But Tyler, one of our favorite things that we've done on this show over the last 5 years is our best bets competition. And
it's
how fitting that we come down to last week, 2-game lead for yourself. Both of us have miserable losing records on the year, so we have not been very good at this. I think all the rest of the seasons that we've done this, the winner has had a winning record in the green, but for some reason this year, neither of us on our game. But that doesn't mean that we can't compete for the final week of the season and see who's able to take home the trophy in the final season of our best bets competition. But you have a 2-game lead, so you'll get first pick here.
Yeah, conference championship week. Board is a little bit smaller this time. Maybe that'll help us. Who knows? Nothing could make it worse. But, okay, let's go to the SEC championship for my first pick here. Texas currently a 2.5-point favorite in the Superdome in Atlanta over the Georgia Bulldogs. I know that Georgia had an impressive 30-15 win in Austin, Texas, just a few weeks back. I like Texas in this matchup, Adam. And I think that Texas is the most complete football team in the country this year. I know that outside of the quarterback position, they're as good as anybody in America right now. And I think that Quinn Ewers will be the reason that Texas wins a national championship, or he will be the reason that Texas does not win a national championship this year. But they're hot right now. They're peaking at the right time. Give me Texas -2.5.
It is very hard to beat the same team twice. And this is interesting because it's almost going to be like a home game for Georgia in some ways. They've had more time to prepare to go to this game. It's in their backyard. They're not going to have to buy hotels or anything like that. So I would expect a strong Georgia crowd here. I'm going to go the opposite direction on this game with you. I'm going to take Georgia +2.5. Their quarterback there has a very confident streak going on right now, as evidenced by a Snapchat game. So I will go with Georgia Bulldogs to cover the +2.5. Just to be a little bit opposite from you here, I'm fighting from behind. So there's an opportunity for me to get a game up.
Chuck, I hope you're right. I hope Georgia does win, but unfortunately, I'm going to ride with Texas on this one. I think they're the better team at this point in the season. So pick number 2, going out to the Big 12, going down to Jerry World, Iowa State taking on the Arizona State Sun Devils. Kenny Dillingham, arguably on the short list for National Coach of the Year with what he's done out there in Arizona. Sun Devils currently a 2.5-point favorite. I know that, Matt Campbell and the Cyclones, they've been in this game before. This is nothing new to them. Arizona State, I think they're just playing too good of football right now. What is it? Scattaboo? Is that how you say the running back's last name? That's one of my favorite. That's one of the best players in college football right now. That's a tremendous story. I think that Arizona State, they continue to ride this wave, and I think that offense does just enough to outscore the Cyclones. Give me Arizona State -2.5.
is another game where I'm going to go the opposite direction than you are here. I'm going to take Iowa State plus the 2.5. My primary thinking here is that Arizona State not expected to have their top wide receiver Jordan Tyson, so that's a pretty big loss for them there. That and now they'll have to match up with a pretty physical Iowa State defense. So it should be a fun game, should be a close game, but a little bit of a zagging when everyone else is zigging here is my thinking on this one.
So I'm either going to win or you're going to lose by like 6 games when this thing is all said and done. So
we'll see.
We'll see. All right. Pick number 3, Big Ten Conference Championship game. A lot of tickets available on secondary market. I think you can get into that game for $19 an hour. Wow. So credit the Buckeye fans for jumping all those tickets. Top 5 matchup. Penn State versus the Oregon Ducks. Over under on this one set at 49.5. I think that this is going to be a defensive slugfest. I favor Oregon in a sense. I think that they've got the better offense. I trust their quarterback more than I do Penn State's, but I don't necessarily trust James Franklin in big time games. And Dan Lanning, he really hasn't won the big one. He didn't win the Pac-12 in either opportunity that he had. I think that this is an underplay. So give me the under 49.5 and what's a low scoring affair up there in Indianapolis.
I'm going for an underplay with my number 3, but I'm going to go to the Conference USA Championship game. Western Kentucky traveling to Jacksonville State, under 57.5. These two teams played 1 week ago at Western Kentucky, didn't hit 40 on the over-under. So I'm just thinking that, hey, maybe they were holding something back, but they didn't necessarily know that this was going to be the matchup. Western Kentucky and Jacksonville State both had to play well to make it to the Conference USA Championship game. So a rematch a week later, those defenses have seen those offenses already. I think it should be the under there. So I'm taking that one.
All right, another conference championship game, UNLV versus Boise State. I love what Barry Odom and Brennan Marion have been doing out there in Las Vegas, but I'm riding the hot hand in Ashton Genty and the Broncos. Boise State, a 3.5-point favorite. Give me Boise State to cover.
My number 4, Marshall traveling to Louisiana for the Sun Belt Championship game. Little known fact here that I just discovered as I was looking at all the board here, Marshall 11-1 against the spread this year. So
we are.
There's nothing else that I would say that, okay, Louisiana is the favorite here to, obviously by 5.5 points, but with a record like that against the spread, I got to go with the Thundering Herd.
Yeah, I don't hate that whatsoever. I had that on my card, but I changed it just because I didn't want us to have separate picks. I'm going to give you a fair chance. So pick number 5, going to the ACC. I don't know why I'm picking this. SMU has been the better football team all season long, but in an ACC championship, Dabo's been here, 8, 9, 10 times it feels like in his coaching career at Clemson right now. SMU is actually a 2.5-point favorite. I think that Clemson wins this game outright. So give me Clemson plus 2.5. I like Cade Klubnik. I like that Tiger defense. I think that they get this thing done out there in Charlotte.
I had that same pick, but I really can't afford to have any of the same picks as you, being down 2 matches. So I'll go with the under on this one, 56.5. No real good reasoning for it. It's just I have to pick something. There's not a lot on the board, so it felt a little bit high for me.
That summarizes the entire bet segment for all season long. Don't really know why, but let's roll with it. So,
yep. Here we go. That's the end of the content in regards to, the Oklahoma Sooners, the best bets, the normal things that we do here on the show. But we did mention a week ago that this is our last planned episode of the main line, really just due to, hey, we've been doing this for 5 seasons and we both had some good positive updates in our personal lives. Both of us getting married over the course of the last 5 years, myself having a son this year. And so I kind of felt like, hey, this is kind of a good point to end it. It's something that we had decided long before the season started. It had nothing to do with Oklahoma's record. Would have been nice if we could have kept it going for a few more weeks and talked playoff or something like that. But unfortunately, that didn't happen. But we mentioned that last week, so we did want to share that news again and kind of use these last few minutes of the show to talk through, I guess, some thank yous that we had along the way, especially some of the guests early on that we had that helped really ramp up the show. Eddie Radosevich, George Stoya from Sooner Scoop. We had Parker Thune from OU Insider. We had Johnny Baseball and Alex Schultz coming on talking about OU baseball, one of our favorite things to talk about in the springtime. Melissa Brito came on and talked about OU softball. Many others. I'm sure I'm forgetting. I know we had like tons of guests in their first season of the main line, but just tons of people that really contributed. I think we only had one person who I won't name that actually turned us down as a guest. So everyone was just so welcoming. And really,
no, you can name drop that. He's not affiliated with Oklahoma anymore.
Okay, so maybe more people have turned us down. I'm thinking of someone else that still is affiliated with Oklahoma. If you want to name it, that's fine.
Who was the like 8th string basketball player that wanted us to pay him like $250 to come on for 5 minutes?
I think it was CJ Nolan. He wanted a lot more money than that.
Yeah, he wanted more than that,
like thousands of dollars. And I was
like, dude, you don't even play.
You average like 2 points a game. Yeah, there was a time where we had OU athletes that were like pitching us crazy stuff. Which, CJ Nolan. I think is he with St. Louis now, or who knows what he's doing? Not relevant in college basketball, but yeah, we had some interesting moments along the way. But tons of people that just supported us, from the very start when we had our first episode way back in 2020. So, Tyler, I know there's a lot of thank yous you probably want to get to as well, and maybe some other sentiments. Take the floor.
It's been a pretty cool thing. I mean, obviously, we started this thing 5 years ago, 211 episodes ago, sitting at my kitchen table with a cell phone recording in the very middle. And, here we are. I'm in my third different office, moved 2 states. You've had a huge amount of change in your life as well as I have. And, really we started this thing as an opportunity really to kind of get together once a week outside of the walls of the OU athletic department, where you always kind of had to be, everything's sunshine and rainbows, everything's painted, with a positive crimson brush. And, it's just been a lot of fun to watch this thing, kind of morph into what it is, whether it's with sponsors, ads, college sports company, Red Dirt Media that, kind of took us under their wing. It's been a lot of fun, having an opportunity, not just to, chat with former players or current players, current OU media guys. I mean, Eddie, George, Parker that have been, recurring guests on this show over the last few years. It's been a lot of fun, following, not just OU football, but honestly, Adam, I think that some of the most enjoyable moments that I've had, doing this over the last 5 years, it's been through, the March Madness rides of basketball, whether it's with Jenny, Porter, Lon, and obviously, we love our OU baseball. Adam's optimism segments is something that I am going to miss. We might have to bring the show back just for baseball season when this thing, either goes off the rails or, Oklahoma is on the path to get back to Omaha, just so I can see Adam's reaction to everything that's going on. But obviously, OU softball being what it was, having Alyssa Burrito on couple of times last year, getting to catch up with her and really get a peek behind the curtain of what goes on, behind the scenes with this OU softball program that is really the standard, not just in collegiate softball, but it's really kind of the standard of dominance in all of sports as we sit here right now in 2024 with these girls going for a 5-peat in just about a month's time. So again, it's been a lot of fun. I know that we've made it, an hour into this podcast. We do have to, throw some flowers to a former co-host of ours that, again, we tried like hell to get him on this year. There was always something that kept him from it. I don't know whether, he was really that busy. I don't know if that's a slight at me or really he just doesn't like you, Adam. I don't know. Anything is up for discussion, but obviously we had Corbin Polson, being a co-host of ours for a couple seasons doing this, and that was a hell of a lot of fun. But then, Adam, I really just kind of want to, tie this up, saying thank you to you. I mean, you've done a huge amount of the legwork behind this, doing all the graphics, all the video work, the uploads and everything. That's not something that I would be capable of doing. It's made my job a whole lot easier. And, really, this thing started out as us being coworkers getting together to, sit here and do this. And, over the better part of the last 5 years, we get together for 1 to 2 hours each and every week. And, that's kind of, turned into you, being one of my best friends. So it's been a lot of fun, getting to chat ball with you, seeing you become a married man and, being a father now. And it's going to be a lot of fun to, watch your family, continue to grow and, watch you become a dad. And it's kind of a sad moment. I mean, it's not quite Michael Scott on his last day at Dunder Mifflin, but got the original logo right behind us here for all the people watching on YouTube. And it's been a crazy ride. Not going to close the door completely on maybe us, getting back into this when the time comes, but it's been a hell of a lot of fun, and I'm going to miss it.
When I hit end stream here, I won't have to talk to you ever again in my life. So
there you go. There it is.
I think when I hit end stream, it'll be kind of that sinking feeling in my stomach, a little bit of like, kind of a little bit of an end of an era. And you mentioned we have left it very open-ended in terms of like, we just don't have anything scheduled. Like we don't have any plans to do anything in the future. Maybe that will change. Maybe we'll get the itch and we'll be on next week, and who knows what happens. Maybe there'll be some groundbreaking news that we feel like we want to give our thoughts about, and we'll see what happens.
When Oklahoma goes 3-and-out in the first possession next year, we'll hop back on. So
we shall see. Maybe it'll just be a special occasion. We'll drop random episodes. If you want to follow us on Twitter, make sure you're doing that. We will not tweet probably as much as we used to, but still put some of our content out there. And if you want to follow us on YouTube, the channel that you're watching this show on is the Red Dirt Media channel. So we're not going to be a part of that network anymore. We have our own YouTube page. It's linked in the show notes, both on podcast and on the YouTube here. That's where we release all of our hype videos. It's where our old podcasts are. Tyler, I thought there probably wouldn't be a hype video going into next year because I was like, there's just no content. There's not enough content for it. But after Alabama, I was like, okay, we got a little bit of highlights. Maybe there will be a hype video next year. I know those are really popular and people enjoy those. So maybe there will be some continuation of hype videos in the future. But we appreciate everyone that's been a part of this show, whether you listened once or this is your first time, watching us, or you were a guest or whatever it might have been. We appreciate everyone that was a part of that. That's a lot of hours of our time, over 200 episodes in the last 5 years. Most podcasts don't make it past 2 episodes. A lot of them just fizzle out after that. So we appreciate everyone that's enjoyed our content, consumed it, tweeted at us on Twitter, trolled us, whatever it is. You guys made it a lot of fun. So we really appreciate everyone that was a part of that. Haven't heard of that Corbin guy before. Don't know who he is, but otherwise, everyone, we've really enjoyed it, and we'll see. Maybe we'll come back at some point in the future, but I guess that's all I've got. Tyler, anything else?
No, I'm like I said, it's been a fun ride. We're gonna miss doing this. We'll see what happens with this football program going into 2025. Basketball's kicking ass right now. We've got softball coming down the pipeline here in just a few more weeks, so things are about to get a lot better. But yeah, it's been a hell of a lot of fun. You're not gonna find, I don't care, you're not gonna find two people that I think follow and care about this as much as we do. So obviously, things aren't going to change, behind the scenes. I mean, with the group chats, getting everybody together still, we'll keep Corbin in it, just because, I mean, what else are we going to do? But yeah, it's been a hell of a lot of fun. I'm going to miss doing it. And it's again, I always just go back to the fact that, just came up with an idea one day and we're sitting at a kitchen table, after a shift at the ticket office where we just got to call, dozens of people that day, telling them that their seats no longer existed. And, again, you'd have to go back to some of the earlier episodes of this podcast. We did share some more stories from our times in the athletic department. We'll see if that sellout streak continues, but yeah, it's been a lot of fun, Adam. I'm going to miss doing it.
Yeah, likewise. And I've enjoyed having you on here weekly with me for the last 5 years. I'll miss talking to you as much as we used to, because I'm sure we'll get busy and it won't be as frequent. But I've certainly enjoyed your contributions and presence and helping be somebody that can lean on this show throughout the course of the history of it. So we appreciate everyone. We appreciate everyone for watching, for listening over the course of the last 5 years. We'll see everyone on Twitter or somewhere else in the future.